Thank you, Madam Chairwoman, and thank you to the witnesses for being here today. Again, I think this topic is the highest relevance to this committee. I've been on it for a while, and I was around in 2007 when the College Cost Reduction Act, a bipartisan bill that was signed into law by President Bush, was signed that cut the interest rate from 6.8% to 3.4% over a 5-year period. It established the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program as well as the income-driven repayment program. 5 or 6 years later, in 2013, again, another bipartisan effort, the Student Loan Certainty Act, was passed. Congresswoman Fox's predecessor, John Klein, and I were in the Oval Office when President Obama signed that measure into law, which blocked what would have been a jump to 6.8% interest on Stafford loans and set the new 10-year note index that's in place here today. And I say that because we are right now on the brink of a cliff. Starting on October 1, despite all of the talk about, President Biden's, it was only a partial loan forgiveness measure, but whatever. I mean, all of those student loans are going to snap back, some of them with very high legacy interest rates on October 1st. And also, incoming freshmen who are about to start their college careers are looking at 5.5% interest rates on Stafford loans for this year. Because again, with the 10-year notes going up, +2, which is the formula that's in place today, and so we're just going to start this, treadmill for borrowers in October for both old borrowers and new borrowers. And it's incumbent, I believe, for us to act as a Congress, and certainly this committee has an essential role to doing that. So if you look at a kid who's at 5.5% interest, the average student loan debt is about $26,000 on average, across where it is today in terms of the portfolio that exists. That's about $7,800 of added costs for interest. That is money that goes into the federal treasury. That is a windfall for the government. It was never the intent of Senator Stafford, that this was going to create an income-generating program for the Treasury, and I think it's time for us to get off that treadmill. Again, the problem is who takes the hit? The student who pays the interest, or the taxpayers that would take the hit if you eliminated interest, because obviously that hole has to be filled. Well, today, myself and Senator Peter Welch in the Senate are introducing the Student Loan Interest Elimination Act, which again basically zeroes out interest across the board. It's paid for, however, and not with taxes. What it does is it establishes a trust fund where principal balance payments are deposited, again administered by the Board of Trustees, and that would then be invested in low interest, low risk securities to generate enough income that would again pay the costs of not having interest payments going into the Treasury. It is a model which exists today for the Railroad Retirement Fund, which is a completely solvent pension program using exactly that type of approach. And that program, by the way, is solvent for the next 25 years in terms of doing that. So it has other mechanisms in terms of accountability, in terms of restricting eligibility for colleges and universities to get grants if their tuitions rise above an unacceptable level. And if it generates a surplus, then there's actually a provision in the bill to divert and invest that money into Pell Grants that are there. But this gets us off this train of interest. It does not excuse, it's not loan forgiveness. People still have to pay their principals levels in terms of their loans. But it gets us out of this interest trap, which again, with the interest recapitalization, metastasizes the cost, the level of debt for students to a point where where they owe more than the loans they actually took out. With my limited time, Professor Cellini, maybe you could just sort of comment in terms of this issue of interest.
Yeah, it sounds like a very interesting proposal. Yeah, we know that students will face a cliff and need to start to repay. I would just caution that, thinking about which programs have access to those loan programs, just to make sure that taxpayers don't pay for, even with no interest, that they don't pay for low-performing,
and that's exactly the
programs.
intent of this. We did it very carefully to avoid that dynamic, which in the past has always been how you paid for it. And we're not doing that with this. And I would ask again, USA Today article on this program, on this bill, be introduced into the record.